welcome back to Storm Champ, the podcast that talks with everyday people who have faced an insurmountable challenge in their life and have seen their way through the other side. My name is Kim. I'll be hosting today, and we're interviewing Mila about her story and some of the silver linings and gems that came out of the recent storm she's faced. So Mila, could you please introduce your story and yourself a little bit to our listeners?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Kim. It's a pleasure being here. So I am Mila DeChant. Thank you for putting in the effort in pronouncing my name just now. I always appreciate it. And I'm a culture scientist, and I founded my company in 2018 called Chief of Hearts, very focused on culture science. And it was born, it was born from a very traumatic experience. So I used to work for Amazon Web Services for 3 years, and I started in 2015. The first 6 months was fantastic. The people were fantastic, and then I was like, okay, time for me to move into a different team, different role, different career progression. And I guess that was the first time I was exposed to what hell is. I do not know what hell is. So all the spiritual people out there, religious people who believe in hell, do not hate me, but this was my experience in hell with this team. And I have never, ever experienced this level of demonizing someone or dehumanizing someone. I had a manager and I thought, oh, she's an immigrant, she is more diverse, she's more open to the lens of what diversity is, leadership is, women empowerment is. And I was so bloody wrong, man. It was all the bloody opposite. Being a foreigner herself, she picked on the way I spoke. She was like, oh, you're a foreigner, and you do not know the American way. And I was like, what are you talking about? And it felt like, everything I did was picked on and scrutinized on. And it was not a space of collaboration. And this is nothing bad on the company, but it's absolutely bad on the people whom they have in a position of power. So everything I said was wrong. Everything I did was wrong. And I felt as though I was pinned down because of whatever reason that she had, right? Because I asked her questions, and asking questions, she took it as a form of challenging her. She took it as a form as to, I'm your supervisor. How dare you challenge me? You ask questions. You do as I say. You don't reach out to people. You didn't reach out to anyone without my permission. And I was like, well, what the bloody hell are you talking about? That's not...
I think a lot of our listeners will probably share in that experience, especially if they've had a toxic work environment in the past, if they've had a chance to kind of look back on some maybe relationships that have an air of power involved in them. That authority piece you were talking to probably was hard earned, right? Any of us who have achieved anything have likely worked hard for that. So sure, I can understand the need for respect my authority of sorts. But there's a way you play that game, and evidently it doesn't sound like they were playing quite the way decent, respectable adults would be playing that game. So that sounds pretty rough. What else was going on at work during that time for it to impact you so much? Because sometimes you let stuff kind of like fall off your back or just kind of go to the side, but this sounds like it really kind of hit you deep.
Right, it did. It absolutely did. And the whole thing was, I thought she was my mentor, and that's why I always, not always, that is one of the reasons why I shifted my mindset from mentors are bullshit, sponsors are king, right? Sponsorship, think about sponsorships in schools, sponsorships anywhere. You get money to elevate yourself. You get the help to elevate yourself. Mentors are people, not everyone is like this, but 99% of the time, this is what I've experienced with mentors, are people who just talk, who are not willing to help, and who become gatekeepers to kind of like check you, like, you are over here. You want to do this? Sorry, I'll act as your mentor. Again, not everyone is like that, but majority of what I've experienced is of that sort. But she took on this persona as to, and again, it's a she, and I was so disappointed. It's a female. I was like, with the whole narrative of we're trying to change female empowerment.
Come on, sis, come on.
Yes. I was like, But it was such a letdown, right? And it was always, and I finally realized, because her leadership and top leadership was seeing what I was doing, what I was bringing to the table. I was invited to team discussions with the VP, and she didn't like it. She was like, you do not speak. She would ping me, she would like message me, you do not speak until I give you permission.
Yeah.
And she knew that my promotion, my career progression was in her hands. So it was like a carrot on a stick, right? And I was with the team for about a year, and then I transitioned out. But during that time when I was with that team, my dad passed away. And that impacted me in a very granular level. I was continents away, and I didn't have the immigration status to fly out. So that imposed another layer to it. And then she was like, oh, take time for yourself if you need, and blah, blah, blah. Because I told her that, my dad passed away and I can't put up with this BS. If you're not willing.
Right. Life is happening. I don't need you. Yeah.
If you're not willing to give me the progression, I'm willing to move teams, because I don't need this added stress to layer onto what is going on, whatever I'm going on with my dad, my dad passing away. That's such, I felt as though I lost a pillar, right? And then I started seeing her change to the point where she started building this narrative as to Mila is not performing because she is distracted by her dad's death. Mila is not doing something because her mind is not at the right place. And she created, she used that. She used that against me, which was such an evil, cruel.
So sour. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, right now, if I could speak with her, I would say, shame on you. Shame on you for doing that.
I feel sorry for you.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it was such I think this was like what thieves do. And I felt that she hired certain people to replace me, and she hired people who were 10 years younger than me. So I think she weaponized all these things. Every situation that she created to harm me. And she told my fellow teammates not to include me in any team meetings, not to speak with me. So they would schedule a meeting at 1 p.m. and I'll turn up for meeting, and they would have already shown up 1 hour before, not letting me know. And when I would show up, they would be like, oh, we already spoke, you don't need to come. With that, I'm not saying all millennials are bad, but with this millennial kind of like what do you call fray voice, you didn't need to come,
Yeah.
Like Kim K kind of voice. Yeah.
Yep.
And then I was like, I always try to maintain a professional behavior, because it's like there's no point losing my cool over that. Yeah. And finally I was like, okay, I don't know what's going on, and it seems like this has been a pattern. So I acknowledged it. And my supervisor got really mad at me, and she said, you're dumb, you're stupid. I've been finding out that you've been speaking to other mentors. I was like, yeah, I am going to speak with other people. Yes. If I'm not getting help from you, I am going to reach out to other people. And I thought to myself, I don't need this abuse. So I moved to a different team. And then when she found out I was moving to a different team, she was like, oh, your promotion was already going to be approved in a week. And I said, don't tell me this bullshit. Right. The promotion was going to be approved to the person whom you hired to replace me. And for the narrative to say that I'm not tech savvy, that's just another passive aggressive bullying narrative to use against me. Oh my God. And when I moved to another team, oh my God, Kim, this was 10 times worse than the previous team.
No, I was hoping for you to come on this story that's perfect. We're rounding the corner. No. Worse? How was it worse?
It was worse. It was 10 times dehumanizing, 10 times more dehumanizing. I lost a sense of me. I already lost a sense of me when my dad passed away and when I was in that team. And when I moved to this team, I absolutely lost who Mila was. I lost the sense to articulate, because that was how deep I was in stress. I was experiencing anxiety. I was experiencing depression. And no matter what I did, I was not good enough. I didn't have one manager
Yeah.
I had 3 managers.
Oh, girl, you're speaking my story. I have a whole, yes, no. And you start questioning yourself because it's not
Right.
that you are incapable of the task. It's that even when you complete the task, it's never good enough. It wasn't the way that
Right.
XYZ wanted it. And evidently you have 3 leaders now who you report to or supervising you and can,
Right.
yeah, no, I've been there. I'm so sorry, but I've been there and I know that feeling. So how long
Right.
did the second team last for you?
A year and a half. A year and a half. And that was, I told myself, okay, I'm coming into this new team. It's a blank slate, right? I can create anything. And that was what I was told. I was told this is a new position. You can make it whatever that you want it to
Ooh,
be.
be careful with the
Oh,
opportunity. Like, you know, and I think that they use these buzzwords because they see the potential and that
right.
ability for you to take it to scale and run with it, but they don't recognize that there's a risk involved. They being supervisors, generally, I'm saying,
Right.
they don't realize the risk involved and the trust required to empower their, we'll call it subordinate, but it should be their team player. Like, just
Mm-hmm.
because you're my boss or my supervisor doesn't mean we're not on the same team here. Like, you know,
Right.
I've always had an issue with that. And especially if you've been rising to the occasion and getting the acknowledgement from the senior administrators and the other outside teams, this is all good signs. But you internalize everything else, all the other noise, as bad signs. And you start to really
Right.
doubt yourself. I've been there, yes.
Absolutely. That was a huge, I'm going to say it, huge baby born from this. It's like, yes, doubt. It's no longer no doubt. It's yes, doubt. It's like, it was, I had 3 managers and it was so interesting. You know, I remember when I was hired, they were like, oh, you know, you can create whatever you want, learn about the team. You're hired to bridge gaps. And the person whom I hired for, right, when I spoke with her, she was like, you know, you're going to be reporting under me. And then when I spoke with the other manager, she was like, well, we're going to share responsibilities. You're going to report under both of us. And then the third manager came in, she was like, you're going to be helping all 3 of us. I was like, okay, make up your bloody minds, people. It's like, no, I'm not a service dog. Even service dogs are not treated that way.
Absolutely.
And I remember being in a meeting and they were like, okay, write a proposal, what you want to do. And because you're brought in to bridge the gaps. So when I went in, I said, this is what I can do because you mentioned that you're having problems and issues with marketing. You're having issues with sales teams. You're having issues with account managers. You're having issues with so many people. That should have been a red flag for me. But I thought, this is how I was thinking as, okay, I'm going in to help people, not to like criticize them. So I met with every team. I met with every team, every person they mentioned about. And every team and every person I spoke to, they were like, no, we were told a different story that you were hired to do a certain job. So they were told lies by these managers. And as I, okay, when I went back to my manager and my manager was like, she was shocked. I'm like, you know, you can tell that she was nervous because I found out the truth. She was like, oh no, they are lying. They are lying. I was like,
Your face
this,
tells me maybe not. Yeah.
right. So when I met different marketing teams and everyone had a resounding team of the people, like my managers were hard to work with. So if not one or two person are saying, it was not 1 or 2 person, it was so many people, every team that they have worked with have expressed this. And for me to hear that, I had to like think about, okay, am I going to be in a hotspot? Because I'm brought in to bridge gaps. So, and then I was like given under the name of project, right? Because they were like, okay, I'm going to bring you as a project manager. I was like, okay, what are the projects? What's the scope?
Right.
And it turned out to be not projects. It was like just tasks, but they packaged and marketed it as project. I was like, this is not a project.
You're
This
like
is
your entire company is a project at this point. Like your entire company needs work. And I guess from a managerial standpoint, not just
right.
your managers and supervisors, like the whole structure just seems like it's crumbling.
Right. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to take on whatever I can take on, and I started like questioning my manager, what are you doing right now that I can help with? And it was such manual work. And when I reached out to people, how can we automate this? This is a repetitive process that we are doing every single day. We can automate this. And I got pushback like, oh no, there are errors. I was like, there are errors by you even doing this on an Excel sheet, because you are altering everything to provide false data to leadership. And I witnessed that and I called her out on it. And
Oh, no.
and then and then of course to them it's like, I'm not their ally anymore because I'm not agreeing. I'm not a puppet woman anymore because I'm not agreeing, or I'm not going with their lies anymore.
Right.
And then slowly I realized that, you know, like whatever I did was not good enough. Again, whatever I did was not good enough. Whomever I reached out to was not good enough. When I questioned managers or whomever that they were hiring in, when I questioned them, it was labeled as Mila can't communicate. She can't speak English. She can't present properly.
Oh, that's so insulting and racist, fuckers.
Right. So I was like, oh, and they would say these things when I was not expecting it, or there's no way of me recording it or tracking it.
Ugh,
So it was pinning me down in such a way where, what are you talking about? You know, it's all in your head. So, and then I slowly started finding myself in position where they started rechanging my job description, saying that I can't perform. And they created this scenario as to they would dump work on me every time I questioned or challenged something, or if I reached out to someone else to question or to get information. Again, I had heard the same narrative. You don't reach out to anyone else without my permission. You don't speak with anyone else without my permission.
Wow.
And I was like, and my manager would yell at me, scream at me. And I was like, I'm not a 5-year-old for you to treat me like this. To a point that it discombobulated me at a very core level. And because from the stress, every time I did something right, and they would pick on it, like every time they would have problems. And especially when they had directed me or given me the instruction to do exactly how it is to be done. And when I would question, I would not even get responses sometimes from these managers, or they would give me wrong responses, or they would direct me to someone else to get the information from. And sometimes I would not even get information. And then they created a scenario where they asked me to do project A, stop project A, go to project B, stop project B, go project A, stop project A, go to project D, stop project D, go to project C. And they created this scenario where I was not capable of completing work, taking instructions. I was not capable of everything. So it went in my PIP review. I was put on a PIP without even me realizing I was on a PIP. They didn't.
What is that? What is
a performance improvement plan?
I got you. Okay. So they formalized their dislikes of your work, right? But you were unable to document anything really, aside from just your anecdotal experience, which has to be infuriating because that's your lived experience day in, day out. But they're using the system to their advantage to continually kind of poke the bear and bully you into corners and stuff.
Right. Okay. Absolutely. So I went to HR, and this was HR response. I know your managers, they're not that kind of people. The problem is with you. You need to find resources. So I was like, okay. And then I called my other HR partner, and she was like, well, I can't help you. If your manager is not your champion, I will ask you to leave the company. So I knew the conversations, I had a hunch that there were conversations going on where they might already be planning to let go of me. Because if a HR person is telling me that, then there's something going on. So it was just a very stressful situation for me. And, you know, them changing my job description, every time I asked a question or challenged something, they would dump work on me. They'll give me work at 4 p.m. expecting me to deliver it at 5 a.m. Oh, wow. I worked 16, 18-hour days. I worked on the weekends. If I didn't do something, I would get pings all the time. So I was like on top of everything. I quickly found out how to save myself, right? Mm-hmm. That is when new team members were coming into the team, and I felt I couldn't trust anyone. I felt that I couldn't trust anyone on the team because I didn't know who was telling what, who was speaking what. They created this scenario.
There wasn't a culture of trust to begin with, though, Mila.
Right.
Like, you couldn't even trust that your supervisor had your back or would at least hold space for you to face whatever challenge you were looking at and support you and coach you and celebrate your successes. There, not once in the moments we've been speaking about your previous experience have I heard any real joy. I mean, I kind of understand why, but like you were never even like celebrated for any.
No, never. Until new teammates came in, and then I found two partners. I'm not going to call them allies because it's like, allies can go quickly, like in a diarrhea mode. But I found two allies, and they were like, one of them said, "I see what's going on with you." And I was like, I couldn't trust, and there was no trust, right? I was like, what are you talking about? Nothing is going on. And she was like, I see what's going on. I see what they're doing to you. You need to fight back.
How did that feel to hear that you were seen for the first time?
Oh my God, I'm not going to use the word empowered. I felt enabled because I had the power, but the power was kind of like you know how when you're free, but you put when you have shackles on you, hard shackles, like heavy shackles on you, and you can't move. You have the strength, but your strength kind of depletes. That's how I felt. I felt that my power was caged in a glass box.
But you felt it. You knew you had it.
I had it.
Like stuck. Yeah,
I felt so depleted. And to hear that voice, I felt like crying. I felt hurt. I felt seen. I felt as though I had a partner. Not allyship, not a mentor. I had a partner. I had a sponsorship. And I finally like spoke with her, and she said, you don't need to tell me. I see everything. I hear everything. I see what you have done in the past that has been roadblocked by these three people. And she said, stay strong. Don't fall into this trap. And I felt so liberated, despite what I was going through. I felt so liberated. But I reached out to people, and especially these two managers, saw what was going on. I reached out to people, I started speaking, and I had another partner, right? Another person who came new to the team, and he did software development. And I said, hey, these are the problems that I've been trying to solve, but it's not going anywhere. I'm trying to automate a lot of processes because the task takes 70 hours a week, and the task is done by me. 70 hours a week. I want to reduce it down to at least 10 hours a week. And he had a good relationship with the third manager. And she sent out an email, what are the problems to the whole team? What are the problems that we can solve? And I was like, this is my way. And my manager was like, oh, you can respond. I give you my permission to respond to her. And I said, these are all the problems from my perspective. I was hired in to do this, and I do not have resources or traction to go forward. These are the problems. These are the solutions. These are the data I have compiled. This is what we'll be saving in not just man hours, but we'll be saving $500,000 for the company.
Yeah, speak their language, right?
Right. And she gave me the go. I partnered with this new person who does software development. These two managers, the other two managers, hated that. So they tried to create a more toxic risk-course environment, dumping work on me. And I felt, again, I felt enabled. At the same time, I felt as I took 10 steps forward, 30 steps backward. And to a point where I felt, I actually stood on top of a building ready to commit suicide because the constant yelling, the constant you're not good enough, the constant, oh my God, it was a nightmare to get yelled at, to get text, to get nasty text, nasty emails. I felt as though I was walking on broken glass, eggshells. That feeling triggered how I felt when I was 11 years old, being abused by my teacher, by my primary school teacher, where she would slap me every day. She would pull my hair, slam me against the wall. The narrative I heard every day in my primary school when I was 11 years old was, you're stupid, you're fat, you're going to grow up to be a person who picks up other people's rubbish.
Yeah.
She'd shame me in front of all my classmates, 40 of them. And she created a group for me at the back of the class saying, this is the most stupidest class. And she'd put me in that group. And she'd ask all the rest of my my classmates to look at me and say, Mila is a stupid, stupid child. Do not be a friend. That was what was triggered. My experience with that team, with especially these two managers, triggered that feeling of trauma. And I felt useless. And I stood on top of a building ready to jump. And that's when I heard the voice stop. I did not know where the voice came from. No one was around. My husband didn't know. My husband had no clue what was. He knew I was having anxiety and depression. He knew I was in a bad space. No one else knew what was going through. I heard the voice stop. I received a text from my sister, is everything okay? My sister had no clue what was going on too. That was a defining moment for me. I was like, my life is worth it. I'm going to fight back. I launched a global program that saved $500,000, 70 hours, reduced 70 hours to 10 hours per task, not just for North America, but for EMEA and APAC. I launched different programs, which was later eliminated when I left the company because they still tried to portray and paint me as the mean person.
Yeah.
And like a few weeks before I left, I called the head corporate, and I reported this, like the abuse. I tracked every single thing, like for like 2 months before I left. I started tracking. I started every email. Every time these two managers like pushed back or created anything or created any narrative, I would go back to the back end software development teams and say, can I have a copy of whatever script was going on, because I'm going to submit this to top HR. And they were really collaborative with me.
Okay.
And I tracked everything. I reported everything. I left the company. The company. Wow. Yeah.
Wow. This is a massive story, and like the work that it takes to even like prove your truth, and the boldness in folks just participating in such ugly ways, and like knowing at the end point, likely knowing that you were collecting information just to state your case. Like there's a whole lot of things in leadership development and the stuff that I've done with students and, you know, boards and different things in the nonprofit space. Corporate world is a bit off of my charge. Like I'm not really familiar with it. I am searching for a job, so perhaps, but in general, in the business of people and developing people and growing people up, this isn't just 2 or 3 supervisors and a fluke of their personality. This is a cultural, developmental norm that has somehow embedded itself into that workplace and has become the way things are done. And if only by some small miracle, if you want to get into, again, the spiritual world of things, you found your truth and ran with it. And I'm so glad your sister affirmed you. I'm so glad you found the strength from wherever to pick up and take your talents to an entirely different scale and create your own, you know, your own fruits of the labor that you went through there. So congratulations on getting
thank you
through it. Let's talk about getting out of it and up into what you're doing now. So once you were able to kind of collect that information, you know, and you put the stuff on teams and you were able to kind of articulate, at least represent a piece of the hell you've been going through, what is closing out of that chapter and starting your current next chapter? What did that look like?
Well, it took a lot of healing, right? It took a lot of healing. I took time for myself to heal first because I was so like discombobulated. The stress, the studies shown, even like TED Talks and it's neuroscience, where they say that when a human undergoes stress, your brain cells gets disconnected, disconnected to a point that you can't, you won't be able to articulate, you won't be able to think critically. So I went through that and I was like, I need to recover from this. So I went through that whole stage of anger, you know, like forgiveness, and I cried for days and all of that regret, shame. And then I was like, you know what? When I started my company, I was like, I've always had this knack for culture. And I've had the humble opportunity to grow up in different countries, to live in different countries, to learn about what culture is, not just from a singular lens, but from a very nuanced, wider lens.
Mhm.
And I was like, this is my calling, because whatever I have built, even when I was part of Amazon, even like in my education career, even as an engineer, like I was an engineer at some point in my life, I was a chemical engineer. I have always built people up. I've always created environments that evolves. And I thought to myself, this has been my calling. This
Yeah.
has always been my calling. So that's why I launched my culture science company, because there's so much of buzzwords going on in the past 10 years. Like chief of people, chief of culture,
Mhm.
but this bullshit still happens. Like whose chief are you? Like
Right. What
chief
kind
of
of
your
people are you working with?
right, like
Right. Like,
like chief of your own bloody ego. Like sit down, shut up. Let's really talk about this. If you really want to care for your people and culture, you really need to understand people from a very core level. The core level is the heart, the beating heart,
mhm.
how one wants to be accepted. And when I launched my culture science company, throughout my healing process, when I was undergoing my healing process, I did a lot of traveling, and that traveling spontaneously turned into research. And that's when I found the missing piece into diversity culture or creating an organization is acceptance.
Mhm.
How do we accept other people, not for how they want to be accepted, not only for how they want to be accepted, but the space that they want to be accepted into.
Mhm.
So when I created this culture science company, I was so focused on, let's truly build people up, not just for C-suite people or for middle management. There's a
Right.
leader in everyone. Every follower is a leader. Every leader is a follower. So when I launched the company, I started offering a lot of content first, because I wanted to build that piece content through my podcast, and podcast also was part of my healing process too,
Really.
talking about certain things and
Mhm.
finding and resolutions. It was not about, oh, it's bitch mode. No, it's about, let's
Solution. Yeah.
right, like people were like, oh, misery loves company. I always tell them, no, reality loves company, because in order to find solutions, you need to tap into, why are you miserable, what is making you miserable, because that is part of someone's reality,
It
and you
is.
cannot dismiss that.
Absolutely.
And that's what I started doing: content via podcast, content via training, workshops, and then partnerships. So yeah, that's what I've been doing, like really bring visibility as to what is leadership. And
Mhm.
that's when I created, it's no longer leadership, it's heartship.
It really is, though. It really
Because
is. Yeah.
yeah, it's heartship. It's like, whom are you going to lead without really like valuing someone's heart, valuing someone's feelings, emotions,
Yeah. I mean, you can go down to the micro level. You can go all the way up to the super high
right.
meta level. Like I mean, there's all sorts of stuff when I think about, when I try very hard not to think about the national politic and rhetoric going on right now, but
Mm-hmm.
it's our duty and all that other stuff. So let's get into it a bit. People talk about bringing back the soul of this nation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there's a lot of rhetoric to be involved in what is America and all that other stuff. But the whole idea that like nothing wrong about America can't be solved by what is right about America, sort of thing, like paraphrasing. But the idea that the heart of who we are and what we're about is central to anything. The
Mm-hmm.
same thing would be said absolutely, and has proven. I'm a social scientist in a lot of regard, by social movements. And so if you want to look at civil rights movements, you want to look at women's movements, you want to look at workers' rights movements, whatever, you pick and choose your topic. It all
Right.
comes down to the heart space if you want to engage in active change. And the
Right.
last thing I'll say is I ended up qualifying for a facilitative leadership certification several years ago, and it is rooted and centered in social change. So it's very
Mm-hmm.
broad and dynamic in its own. And like page 3 is basically talks about your head space and your heart space, and that
Right.
combination between the two. So there's absolutely hard factual research out there for going on at least a decade, probably more, I'm sure,
Right.
especially in cultural and community spaces. Absolutely. I think what you experienced was the front lines of corporate America and sort of this structure within capitalism really clashing with the business of people.
Right.
And you came out with a whole bunch of bruises from it. And I don't think your story is that unlike others, unfortunately, but I think that the solutions based focus of sort of like what I did with that fire and that the bruising and all of that, like, is extraordinary. So let's talk a little bit about what has it been like to put those pieces together after you've sort of gone through the storm. You've been able to create this new project, this new business, this new world lens. What has it been like kind of driving that work now?
Oh, it's the fire. I call it the fire within me. It's because I really want to see change. I am tired of all the conversations. I'm tired of all the check boxes, the fake check box. It's a marketing. It's a marketing strategy. So
Really? Yeah.
it's I really want to see people thrive, and that's the fire in me. That is what is driving me right now, and that's what I've been doing. It's like truly reaching out to people and like engaging in conversations and saying, hey, how can we build coalitions?
Mm-hmm.
Coalitions to execute, right? Execute. And to your point, this is something that I believe in my company too. Like Heartship is about whatever happens at home, happens in the workplace, happens in schools, happens in our society, and at a global scale. If I'm going to use Amy Cooper as an example
Okay.
from the internet, Amy Cooper lashed out at that level because she was challenged by someone who didn't look like her, sound like her. She could have handled it in a very different manner, and probably she didn't know how to take it. Maybe her ego and her power was so challenged. Her narrative was like, how dare you do that to me?
Mm-hmm.
And it really made me think, if someone is behaving like that in public, how are they behaving like that in the workplace? And she was a VP, a person with power who holds access to resources and opportunities to people.
Mm-hmm.
Whom is she safeguarding or gatekeeping these resources from?
Mm-hmm.
Is my question, and it's what I had experienced. And that is the driving fire in me. Equity for all, because when we talk about gender gaps, gender equity, pay equity, home equity, home ownership equity,
All of it, girl.
all of it starts somewhere. Humans show up at the workplace for a paycheck. Without their paycheck, you as a company, you're enabling poverty, you're enabling homelessness. So it becomes a social responsibility. It has to start there. It has to start in schools. So that is the driving fire and fuel in me. It's like, this is just not a project. It's not a project. It's for workplaces. My mission is to change leadership into Heartship, not just at workplaces, but in schools, in our society, in the political system. And I'm doing it one step at a time by inviting people into conversations and then saying, hey, how can we create a coalition? Like changing talk into action. So that's the driving fuel for me.
Absolutely, absolutely. So this is super awesome and interesting. I've been struggling with my own workplace fit, I guess is what we'll call that. I think a lot of us, all of us in general, right? We were told in middle school, I remember, you're gonna hold at least 10 different jobs. Like your job that like your dad had, or that whole idea of like working at one place for 40 years, 50 years, 60 years and retiring is kind of on its way out. Well, then here comes the late 90s and 2000s. So it's definitely all sorts of messed up now. That expectation, that entitlement, that assumption, some of those pieces are deeply rooted, of course, in white privilege and capitalistic, societies. But in general, as we, as a generation, as an individual, grow up and into ourselves and into the world around us, I think that especially whatever post-COVID-19 might look like, the workplace is going to shift. And I think a lot of our values are going to be kind of put in check. I think about some of the pros and cons that are coming from the fact that so many of us are working from home right now, which means we're also parenting while working. It means we're also running our households while working, things like this. And so we're discovering capacities within ourselves and maybe within our partners or our neighbors or whoever that usually wouldn't be a part of the dialogue of work, but our heart is now sort of exposed in the matter. So it's kind of an open-ended and very like thought process on the edge of my mind, but I'm wondering your thoughts in terms of returning or revolving what work looks like post-COVID, particularly taking into consideration some of the lived experiences that you and myself and others have gone through in toxic spaces as well.
So I I did research on this. So I waited really long. I was like on stealth mode, collecting data for 10 weeks on working from home.
Mm-hmm.
And the invisible has become invisible. The invisible has become visible.
Mm-hmm.
To your point, working from home is not remote work. I want to repeat this again. Working from home is not remote work. The pandemic has clearly, to your point, Kim, has revealed so many factors. Parents have had and are having to put on multiple hats of being a caregiver, a chef, a conflict resolutionist. You've got to attend to jobs. What if you had a disabled parent? You have to take care of them as well, right? So a lot of things that has been invisible has brought to visibility, and a lot of people have shared with them that on the data that they struggle a lot. Their mental health took a toll because even though the commute was eliminated, right? Commute was eliminated, and they have extra 2 hours, but they get up early to prepare for lunch, whatever that they had to prepare, because no longer childcare.
Right.
So they had to prepare and then straight go into work. And then while working, they had to juggle so many things that takes a toll on their mental health. Absolutely. And then most people they work till 11 p.m. to catch up with work, not getting sufficient support from team managers, and they were micromanaged. Mm-hmm. So working from home shows a different lens as to what companies are doing right now, thinking, oh, you can work from home, you're sick, work from home. Or you have a child to take care of, work from home. No, where's the humanistic side?
Right.
So everyone talks about the future of work. I say that's bullshit. That's absolutely bullshit. We need to focus on the now of work, not future of leadership. Forget about the future. If someone was to tell me, oh, I'll exercise in 5 years' time, I'll eat cake now, shut up. Do it now. You want to, like...
That's a good point. I mean, that makes complete sense. You're absolutely right.
Like, do it now. If you don't do it now, it's like, if you see something, you say something, right? Are you going to say, oh, I'll speak up in 5 years' time for racism? I'll speak up in 5 years' time because I saw my sister get raped? No, you do it now. You do it bloody now, because there's a leader in you. You need to take action right now. So it's not the future of work. It's the now of work. It's the now of us. Leaders, and I wrote an article recently too, and I published it on my website. As leaders, we need to rethink what flexibility looks like, how working from home looks like. Flexibility is, do we really need 40 hours a week to work from when we have technology to facilitate automation and humanize our work line, right? Flexibility also looks like, do we really need 9 to 5, start at 9 and end at 5? Right. Like in my company, I have power hours. Every Monday, we only get together for 1 hour, mission, what needs to be achieved, set out to do. Friday, quick 1 hour, and that's it. And we have communication platforms, Slack, text, whatever, to communicate. We need to really adopt the mindset of evolution. It's no longer culture fit. This is not a one size fits all dress.
Right.
One size.
By the way, it never was a one size fits all dress.
Oh my God, no. Every time the dress goes right here, my hips are like, goodbye, this dress does not fit you. So that's another BS. We need to challenge that paradigm. So it is culture evolution, right? Culture is about your people, the lives of people, sustainability, emotions, right? People say, I'll leave your emotions out. Like, what are you, robot?
How? Yeah, we're human. We're still human, actually, guys.
Right.
We're doing it.
If you eat lunch, right? If you're going to say, leave your emotions out, hunger is another kind of a feeling. So don't eat, don't pee, don't drink. So we need to rethink what flexibility is like, what working from home looks like, what the new work week looks like. My company, we only work for like 20 to 30 hours a week, and that's it. Nothing else more. And how support looks like, how evolution, like career evolution looks like, how entrepreneurship in jobs look like.
Mm-hmm.
Are we hiring someone to do the dirty work that we don't want to do? Or are we hiring like under the pretense of marketing specialists,
Right.
culture specialists to do all the paperwork that you don't want to do, the tasks that you don't want to do? Are we hiring people to be your assistant? Or are we hiring thinkers and doers who are individuals? It's no longer written on investment, it's written on individualism,
Mm-hmm.
written on impact.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the returns that we need to focus on. So those are some of the solutions, and that's how I see the now of work.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually speaking about this in 2 weeks time. I'm presenting a talk. So I'm really excited to do that too, but we really need to rethink. It's no longer the future of work, it's the now of work. Working from home is absolutely possible if we changed our culture and our mindset, and we need to put the right people in C-suite and middle management.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think you have a great analysis given obviously your experience and things like that. So the workforce wherever and however is incredibly lucky to have you as part of their brain and things like that. I think that's fantastic. Trying to think of a few last wrapping up questions for our listeners and everything. I know that this topic in general, whether folks are enjoying the place that they are working or are absolutely miserable or maybe out of work. I mean, this is something that's constantly kind of in the back of our minds with life being how it is right now. But in terms of what you enjoy and value most on this side of reality now, the grass is greener, how? What are like two major ways that taking kind of ownership and leadership in your own career, and also I assume being able to lift others up in the work that you do, what are two highlights that you would say have made this whole journey worth it?
Being the vehicle for people to speak and for me to give a listening ear, like to truly listen. We talk about, oh, I'm listening, but don't listen while you're on your computer or while you're texting or when you're thinking about what should I eat tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, people want to be heard. And it goes back to acceptance. When I mentioned about acceptance is the missing piece to diversity and to culture. People want to be accepted, and acceptance looks like to be heard, to be seen. And that is one of the things I love serving people. When I say serve, I also say being a partner with people.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because a relationship is not about walking front or walking at the back. It's about walking side by side and saying, hey, let me see the same thing as you're seeing. Let's look at the scenario together. Not I look first and then you come and look. Not you look first and then I'll come and look. It's let's look at the sunset, sunrise, whatever it is together. So that's one thing. And number two is always knowing what your true essence is, what you are capable of. Eliminate the narrative and the lies that you were told of the singular concept of what leaders should be, how a leader should look like, what confidence is, what public speaking is. Don't listen to someone who says, you're not a good public speaker, you're not a good speaker, you're not confident. A confident person can look like a female software developer who's soft-spoken, who chooses to sit in a separate room, who is introverted and yet can deliver confidently on a project in front of 20 people. Confidence aligns with passion. Public speaking aligns with passion and essence and individuality. So those are the two pieces that I want to share.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know a lot of what I'm picking up from what you're sharing with us today has to do with alignment. I think I can think back, and I'm sure you can, and others too, to when we weren't quite as well aligned, and that anger starts to really seep up.
Right.
That frustration, that doubt, all that heavy negativity starts to kind of overshadow any sort of optimistic or hopeful, energy moving forward. And so I guess, and one last sort of tip or trick for folks who might be struggling, who might not really quite see that light yet and doesn't really know how to get through this crisis or this storm right now. What what would you say to folks who are feeling that anger and that frustration and that doubt? What could they do with that feeling immediately? And then also, what would you tell them? Like, just hope for them.
Your emotions are valid. Your emotions are valid. Do not disregard your emotions. But we also need to heal from our emotions. Ask the why, when, how, who. What made you angry? Why is it making you angry? Challenge yourself. Because when we don't challenge ourselves, we will never grow. And that was the biggest thing I did. I had to challenge myself. At some point, I had to forgive these people. I had to forgive these people who did injustice to me. Because there's no point in carrying a burden, a heavy bag of sand all throughout your life when they did whatever they did to harm you, but you're still carrying the bag of sand. It only hurts you. Let go. And know that you have the strength to create something, start a podcast and voice your anger, voice your emotions. And through voicing out, writing, speaking, dancing, painting, you'll find your solution. You'll find your clarity. And that's how I got my clarity.
And I would argue your voice back too, because there's a lot of what you had said about, I feel like I lost myself.
Right.
It is the most debilitating experience for me to be a loud, bold, big presence in this world and to all of a sudden have lost it. Like what happened, you know?
Yeah, no, I agree. That was the biggest thing for me. It's, through healing, I was like, one day I just woke up and said, I'm back.
Exactly.
Mila's back. Exactly. It's like, and my husband was like, I see the real Mila back. The bubbly, like the jovial, because I make like really dirty, perverted jokes. And my husband is like, you're back because you're talking about dirty things right now and perverted stuff. So you're back. So yeah, it's, I'll tell people, listen to your soul, listen to your heart, to your beating heart. Eliminate the unwanted voices because those are all lies. Find your partners, not allies. Find your partners who will listen and lift you up, and pay it forward. Always pay it forward. Pay it forward in the form of listening to someone else, giving someone else an opportunity, because just because someone else shut the opportunity for you does not mean that you have to become that person.
Right.
Create a platform, create an environment that enables as opposed to disabling and displacing.
That's right. Awesome. Oh, Mila, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today and paying it forward by sharing all of those gems. That was fantastic. I hope, and I know our listeners will take so much from what you've been able to kind of share and highlight through your own storm. So again, Mila will have all of your social media shared with our listeners on our website. You'll be able to listen to this podcast anywhere you stream your podcast, via Spotify, Stitcher, et cetera, et cetera. We'll make sure that Carlos gets everything up on the website as soon as possible. And best of luck to you and everything.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And yeah, we'll stay in touch. Can't wait to see what you do next.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Bye, Mila.